Thank you for tuning into ACTAI Global's Fireside Chat with Jesse Richman and Jamie Wheal. I'm Amanda Terry, your host for this session and ACTAI's Chief Curation Officer who drives our content curation and community outreach. Today, I'm very excited to have Jesse Richman and Jamie Wheal joining us. Jamie is the Executive Director of the Flow Genome Project and co-author of the Pulitzer-nominated global bestseller, Stealing Fire. He's an expert on peak performance and leadership, specializing in the neuroscience and application of flow states. Jamie has advised everyone from the U.S. Naval College and Special Operations Command, multiple Red Bull athletes, and the owners of the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and Premier League teams, in addition to a number of executives from Google, Deloitte, Goldman Sachs, Cisco, the Bohemian Club, and the Young Presidents Organization. Jesse Richman is one of the arguably best big air kite surfers in the world. He's a two-time world champion big air kite surfer and international team rider for North Kiteboarding and Mystic. He recently competed in and won Red Bull King of the Air 2020, which we'll show a quick video clip from that, in front of a 10,000 person audience in South Africa. I'm going to give people just a couple minutes to join before we get going, then we'll dive right in. So for those of you who don't know who ACTAI Global is, we're a 501c3 and community of athletes, conservationists, technologists, artists, and innovators that bring our collective knowledge, energy, and social capital together in active gatherings. Our community supports projects benefiting environmental conservation, economic empowerment via entrepreneurship. Together, we have brought to life a marine conservation area with Mission Blue, supported other conservation organizations such as Ocean Elders, Virgin Unite, the Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, and Lonely Whale. ACTAI has also catalyzed gatherings around the world, including the Australia-based West Tech Fest, the Necro Blockchain Summit, and the Extreme Tech Challenge. ACTAI was also a partner in the formative stages of the 2030 Vision Project to bring technology and multi-stakeholder partnerships to solve the 17 United Nations Sustainability Goals.
Hello.
Hey, Jesse. Jesse, hey, Jesse.
Oh, sorry, I'm late.
No worries. Thanks. I know it's early your time, so we appreciate it. I know you're in Maui, and thank you for coming on. Just some quick housekeeping notes for the virtual gathering. First of all, this fireside chat is being recorded. And anything in the chat box, people will see who are on the webinar, but it won't be part of our final recording. And secondly, we'd love for you to ask questions. We've kind of changed up the format, and we're going to have Jamie and Jesse riffing with each other, but there will be a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And if you click that button and submit your questions, either they'll be reading them or I can read them to them live. And when you ask a question, if you provide your name and where you're from or your location, we can read those out as well. And if you're having any issues logging into Zoom, you can join us via the local phone number that was in your registration email. And if that is how you're joining us, we can also get questions via fireside@ACTAI, ACTAI.global. So I was here to do the intros and some of the housekeeping for the webinar, and we'll help field questions for our panelists. And I will also be posting a link in the webinar chat, and there's going to be a special Zoom room that if anyone can join afterwards, we'll just do a quick half-hour catch-up for the community. So hope you can join us for that. And with that, I want to start this amazing video of Jesse winning the Red Bull King of the Air.
Good afternoon, everybody, and all of you from around the world to the 2020 Red Bull King of the Air. We are coming to you live from the beautiful, windy city of Cape Town, South Africa, here at Kite Beach. In the final, we have 3 Red Bull King of the Air winners. We have Jesse Richman, we have Nick Jackson, and we have Aaron Hadlow. What a way to end it. Who will be on top here for 2020?
There goes Jesse. It's the first handle pass of the final.
Your King of the Air champion in first place is Jesse Jesse!
Great. What an awesome video. Well, we've got Jamie and Jesse here. We got Jesse, I think, with some coffee, or is that tea? I don't know. I know it's earlier time.
Coffee with my special Flow Genome mug.
Nice.
Pulitzer.
Great. I'm going to let Jamie take it from here.
Yeah. Thanks, Amanda. Well, welcome everybody. Fun time. Nice to get to connect again, Jesse. It's been at least a year and a half or so, I think, since we've been together in person. So yeah, let's just take it from that shot. By the way, the money shots for me was you doing the quick little boost by the beach, banging your chest like a silverback gorilla, plus the amazing ski goggles. Now, did you just wear those on the beach, or were you actually?
Well, I mean, that event, they only run it when the wind's like 30 plus knots. So on the beach is one of the most annoying places you could be without little things like the ski goggles, which, I mean, it's also helps not only just keep your eyes completely free of sand, but it kind of helps build a little bit of that barrier where when I'm walking around that beach, you put the headphones in, the ski goggles on, and you're in another world. Kind of feel like a gladiator walking into the Coliseum, and just kind of helps. I mean, it is the biggest event of the year for kiteboarding, and that helps get me in the right mindset.
Well, you look like you just wandered in from Burning Man. You're like, hey, what the hell, folks?
Exactly.
That's storms. We got this shit on off. Well, awesome, because so that video is pretty triumphant, right? I mean, that's you being crowned again for the second time King of the Air, and my sense is you've been at that for a while, and you had an early breakthrough success, and with your first victory, and then a number of years of doing your level best and having different things happen, up to and including a spectacularly gnarly wipeout. So just talk us through that. Talk us through your experience of that contest as kind of, a mirror into your life, as a competitive athlete. What was it like to win the first one versus what was it like to win this one, right? And how have you managed the road in between them?
I mean, that was the trippiest experience, is kind of going from, they brought the King of the Air back in 2013. So I went into that event not really with any expectations, at a time in my career where I was not really that much of a competitor, and I won that event. And that experience of winning was kind of just the complete shock, because I went in having no expectations. And once this thing started, I was like, this feels really good. And the last time that they had run this event was in Maui in Hawaii, that would have been in 2005. So I was competing when I was 12 years old. And that was like this competition that I saw as a kid, looking up at all these pros, like, wow, this is the coolest thing that I've ever seen, and kind of like inspired me to get into this sport. And then fast forward through a lot of my professional career, where I was competing on the world tour, to now at this one-off event in Cape Town, where this is it. And I went out there, and just the entire day I felt great. Like, I knew it. I was like, started the day off, every heat started to go very well. I was like, all right, this is happening. I'm kind of looking around at a few people, periodically just kind of smiling and having that little like bit of a connection there, where you're like, you see what's happening. I see what's happening. This is okay. This is going to happen. Here we go. And winning that event definitely was a pivotal kind of moment for my career. And then the following year, I come in with just the biggest expectations, felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders, and I ended up breaking both my legs.
How old were you at that point?
I would have been 2013. So I would have been 21 when I won it. So
Wow.
then 22, the next year I break both legs in the event, and just kind of like completely shattered my world, shattered my legs, shattered the whole, like my whole concept of what I was supposed to be doing, because I had finally found this purpose of my life where I'm like, all right, I used to be a freestyle competitor. Now I'm a big air rider. And after kind of having that disappear, I competed in it pretty much every year except for one other year when I was injured. And I've always done really well. And I've always made it to at least the semifinals, if not the finals. But for whatever reason, I would get to the finals and think like, this is the biggest event of the year. I need to do the craziest thing ever and try tricks that I've never even tried before. And every heat beforehand, I would just do my routine. And in the finals, I would go ballistic and try something, and I'd crash, and I'd get second or third or fourth. And this year was very different. I signed with a new sponsor at the beginning of last year, and their support has been incredible. And it's kind of like joining a new family, where I look around and they are a bit of a startup in that sense, where everyone is super hungry. So everyone can appreciate here how incredibly amazing that synergy is when you're in a company that everything is going well and you feel loved and supported. And I know that even if I come in last place, they're going to support me. And then top that with, I had a new baby last year. So
well, hold tight. I want to give that tons of room, but let's actually, I want to unpack some more of your journey before we get there, if that's
sure,
cool.
Absolutely.
So a couple of things. I mean, first is, you mentioned 2013 was the first time there was kind of the reboot of King of the Air. I know our buddy Ruben, who's an extended part of the ACTAI family as well, was one of the pioneers in that space. Aaron Hadlow, like the tour was very much focusing on relatively lower amplitude, high technical tricks, right? And then to go to the big air contest, first of all, what was that like as an athlete, as a competitor, versus just drilling almost sort of gymnastics level precision on tricks to something that is just boosting huge, and it's a lot of kind of balls and backbone, and good luck. How was that transition, even because this kind of shifted the sport a good bit, right?
Well, I mean, that completely, thank you for bringing that up. That was the most exciting thing at the time, was the competitive scene was so technical and focused on tricks that really, like you said, it's gymnastics, it's water gymnastics, but it's not how crazy can you do it, it's how technical can you do it. So even when you're training for this stuff, it's not, I would say, for me, it's not that exciting. It is really fun when you land a super complicated technical trick, but then you compare that to going out in 30, 40 knots of wind, trying to jump as high as you can. And then once you get to that height, everyone's jumping high, then trying the craziest trick you've ever done. That's where all of a sudden you're like, okay, like this is, now there's some extreme consequences. And
and now a lot of athletes, as they made that move, a lot of them, it seemed like they sort of went a little more retro. So there was more of the kind of like the board offs, the soul surfer kind of moves, because at that amplitude, you're like, this is all I got, right? Yep. But I think you were and still are one of the on a short list of folks that are still throwing in ridiculous numbers of spins, incredible amounts of variation. So were you able to bring that from your earlier training in the technicalities and keep it? Was there a transition period? Like, how the hell did you figure out how to go that big and keep all your air awareness and water awareness, with 50, 60 feet underneath you?
Well, I'd always looked at how we competed on the freestyle tour, where generally we wouldn't use the kite to get high. You would try to simulate a wakeboarding boat. So you'd keep your kite in front of you and just try to use your speed to load and pop. And you'd go 10 feet. But the concept being is that your pole is horizontal, because when the pole is vertical, it's pulling you up. It's completely different. It is a lot easier. So what I would do is I'd be like, all right, well, I still want to get that horizontal pole, but I want to loop my kite. So I get yanked up first. So I'll jump up, I'll loop my kite underneath me. So I'll be doing the same tricks that the technical guys are doing, hopefully 4 times the height. And that was when I was competing in freestyle. So then when I see this whole new kind of concept of, no, we want to see you go as high as you can. I know everybody else is doing, like you were saying, the old school, more conservative or tricks where you have generally a better control, everything where you're hooked in. And I was like, no, I want to do the most extreme tricks as high as I possibly can. And honestly, throughout the competition, throughout the last 8 years, that has helped me and hurt me, where some of the times I looked at the judging criteria and I didn't do what they wanted to see. I did what I wanted to show them, because I'm like, no, this is, to me, the most extreme thing that you can do. And there were years where it didn't get rewarded because it wasn't perfectly in line with their criteria. But
well, I want to get back to that too. The difference between kind of like soul surfing versus technician and kind of point gaining. You know, it's the difference back in the day between Laird and Kelly, or any of those kind of situations, right? And it feels like King of the Air was a move back towards the spirit of the game. Right. This is what we actually all want to do when we're not point monkeys. And let's get, and it clearly that, the fans on the beach wanted the same. But let's talk about, I want to go back to the place where you said it hurt you. Because I mean, not just figuratively, right? That second year. And I think we were actually all at a Mai Tai event. I remember Susie coming up the beach and going, Jesse just busted both his legs. So I literally have a Mai Tai ACTAI memory of that as it was going down. And so, talk to us about that. What was it like to have gone from the young kid, first crack at it, boom, sends it and wins it, to going back to look to repeat, to have that event happen? So walk us through that, and then also kind of what was your mental and physical road to back in the saddle?
I mean, that one was a trip, because that year, the second year, I wasn't on my game, and it's a weird thing where I went out there and I was busy and I was putting in a lot of effort, but it wasn't really, I could tell deep within, I was like, I'm just like, it's busy work. Like, I don't feel like I'm getting to the grunt of these heats. I don't feel like, even the heats that I advanced through, I didn't feel like I crushed them. I just skimmed by. And eventually playing the numbers game where you do, let's say that year they doubled the amount of heats that we were basically doing. So we have 12 heats throughout the day, and eventually you're going to do one trick that might screw you up. And at that time we were wearing bindings. So the board there was no release. There was no way to kick the board off. And I just screwed up a kite loop. And I looked and I fell out of the sky from 30 feet. And I was like, this is going to be a bummer. But in the back of my head, I was like, but you got this. Like, try to land it. You can do this. This is like, you're the man. This is what you do. And so I just tried to land this jump from 30 feet and just crumpled on the landing, completely folded in on myself, tried to stand up after that, and just like legs were gone.
Oh.
And from that experience, from like kind of looking around, all of a sudden I was like, like you aren't the man, you aren't the big air guy. And it really, I'd say it was an identity crisis of trying to understand who I was, because I'd created such a persona based around this event. And I had done so many different kind of stunts in that past year. That was the year that I did the toe up. That was the year where I was like, all right, I'm creating this version of myself that's just this extreme guy, and having in a second just kind of all that disappear was a trip.
Yeah, that actually, I mean, it makes me think of like your arc as an athlete during 4 King of the Air is really close to like the Grail Legends, like the King Arthur legends, because
Mhm.
there's a young knight Parzival, and he's just a village kid, and he sees all the fancy knights ride by, and he's like, holy shit, what are they doing? That looks rad. I'm gonna go do it. So he goes on a quest for the Grail Castle, and as a young guy, he makes it in. And then he, like, he's trying to find the Fisher King, he's trying to find the magic cup, and it's because he's so innocent and because he's so pure that he gets in. But then he gets booted out, and it takes him like another 40 years to earn his way back. Now, it didn't take you 40 years. It looks you got it in under a decade. But that notion of like, when we don't know what we don't know, and we're just
Yep.
kind of innocent and winging it, right? We can ring the top bell. But then when we get, when we get a setback, when we get an injury, when we get a wound, right? Then the question is, now I got to do this all on purpose, and having to think it through to make it happen a second time is way harder.
Exactly. Absolutely. Where the years, that's where it all changed. Was okay, I had that huge injury, and then as I started to come back and have more tries at it, it was pretty interesting, because it's like playing a video game where you get to almost to the final level, and then all of a sudden you screw up and you die. I was like, what happened here? And I really wasn't that analytical for maybe the first year or two. And then I started to look at it and be like, okay, what is happening? Why am I not winning this thing? And that, just the way of looking at it that way, kind of shaped how I problem solve. And I got to pull all of these different, experiences from my life to, I would say there's two things. To one, find the way to put myself in the perfect mindset, because that's something that I've been talking to you about for years and kind of playing around with, is how do you get into that perfect flow state? And then on the flip side, how do I be a mathematician here and just piece this equation together, because it's a science. And it took me 8 years to kind of dial in that recipe, to the point where this year I was like, no problem.
Well, let's talk about that, because I mean, and you had reached out right around the birth of your little one, and the transition from being just a young athlete on the go to suddenly really starting to nest and build a life and a relationship and a family. And at the time, I'm like, oh shit, I wonder, because I mean, I know how, being a young parent is grueling, right? And I was like, holy shit, is Jesse going to have enough in the tank and enough clarity and focus to still be able to perform? And you said something that I thought was fascinating, which was, you said something along the lines of just how your shift in priorities this year had led
Yep.
you to, your world was obviously much bigger. It wasn't just all about the boards, and time, and photo shoots or the comps. And at the same time, you're saying, but I also became like an engineer. I became really methodical. So talk to us about that seeming paradox, which is, on the one hand, you're like, hey man, my world is so much bigger, so I don't care as much about this contest or any other, any other technicality. And on the other hand, you were super fine grained and meticulous about it. How did that end up being a winning combo? And was that a potential sort of, part of your secret sauce for finding yourself more in the zone, more in that kind of unconscious competence?
Well, I mean, this, in the years past, in the last maybe 5 years, I would spend months, probably about 6 months, with a very regimented plan, a training plan. And it wasn't just, all right, how am I going to be stronger? It's how am I going to mentally be prepared for this event? And the amount of simulations and visualizations and different kind of heat days that I would do was absurd. And the amount of time that I spent on that was completely ridiculous. But I had that time, and it was the highest priority, because like, this is the biggest event of the year. This is what I do. And this year, like, I had a baby in July and the event's in January. So you better believe I did not have the same amount of time to focus on it. And I'd still go to the gym every once in a while. And I still would look at it and be like, all right, if I have a few hours, I'm going to go kite. I'm not going to have the time to go to the gym, to train, to bike, and to kite. So I just kind of prioritized kiting, and kiting shifted from something that was almost a job to, I get 2 hours out to go and play. Perfect. Make it happen. And a lot of times I'd be like, okay, the waves are pumping. So instead of training for this big air game, I might just go and have some fun in the waves. So honestly, it was by a huge difference, the least amount that I've ever trained for King of the Air. But I started to think about it on the technical side, and I looked at it and I was like, all right, I'm going to formulate a plan months in advance. I have the judging criteria here, and they've been continuing to change it little bits, but I just looked at it. I was like, all right, there is a way that I can change what has happened to me in the past, where in the final, I have a terrible experience. Like, personally, it's not a fun thing to do. And that's what I want to do, is I want to have a good time, because if I'm having a good time, I'm going to be riding good. And I just wanted to take the thinking part out of it. So I looked at my heats, I looked at everything, and I was like, you get scored on 3 tricks, and you have a 15-minute heat. So I'm just going to pick my 3 tricks right now. Done. That's it. And every single heat, I'm going to do those same 3 tricks, because it doesn't need to evolve. It doesn't need to like grow throughout the contest. I just need to land those 3 tricks. So I kind of formulated my plan early on. And then anytime I would go out and kite, I would just practice those 3 tricks. And as we got closer to the event, I just didn't, I don't know, I wasn't that concerned. Normally I go to the gym every day when I'm in Cape Town, and this year I was like, I went twice and it was fun, but honestly, I'm having more fun with my wife and my baby, and I just kind of, I'm working more with my sponsors to develop the gear, and kind of more involved in the company side of things. So yes, I do really want to win, but slowly I just don't care as much, I guess.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's a couple of things that come up. One is that Warren Buffett notion of, like, he says the difference between the good, the merely good, and the great is that the great say no to almost everything.
Yep.
And that kind of thing of, like, don't fear, the Bruce Lee, like, don't fear a man who's practiced 1,000 kicks, fear the one who's practiced one. So, like, you shrinking your world to those 3 tricks and just absolutely hardwiring them. Seems like it probably, I mean, if I had to guess, like, to nerd out a little bit, it probably, like, freed up a good chunk of your working memory and processing,
sure.
which allows you to go unconscious and be more in the zone more often, because you've just got it so into unconscious processing. Did it feel like that as you were?
Well, I mean, then every day that I'd go out and kite, even like in Cape Town in the days coming up, I kind of thought about it, and a lot of people usually try to like keep their best tricks to themselves, so nobody else gets a view into what the other competitor's game is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, screw it, like, these are my 3 tricks, and I just go out there and ride with, and I just do them. And sure, I'd evolve them a little bit. I'd be like, all right, there's a slight variation I'm going to add into this one. But yeah, just every session too, I would be like, all right, I just need to do 3 tricks, and I can do them as many times as I want. And maybe in this wind condition, it's only favorable to do these 2, because I need more wind for this 3rd one. So I'm just going to do 2 tricks. So yeah, it absolutely just simplified everything. And every time there were definitely like a lot of times where I'd have a little bit of doubt build up, and I'd be like, no, but you should do something else that's insane. And then no, keep it simple. These 3 tricks, done.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, that makes me think. There's a Yale psychiatrist, Stephen Berglass, who's written a book called Reclaiming the Fire, and it talks about supernova burnout. So, like, when you're a superstar, how weird is it that prime ministers, that athletes, that rock stars often end up just tanking their life with drugs, with sex, with just erratic, random behavior? They'll embezzle money they don't need. They'll do whatever they do. And he really looked under the hood, and he's like, if you're a Tiger Woods, if you're a Michael Jordan, right? If you're somebody who everybody expects greatness from at all times, and no one understands how hard it is, right? Then at some point you're like, fuck this. This is a zero-sum game. Like, everybody expects me to come home with the gold, and if I do, it's business as usual. But if I don't, then I'm a failure, and everyone's sticking microphones in my face. So they engage in self-handicapping or self-sabotage. And that's Tiger Woods with all of his erratic behavior. That's Michael Jordan being like, I think I'm going to try baseball, like whatever it is, like I got to reset so I can get back to my love of the thing, or just blow myself up because I don't give a fuck anymore, right? And it seems like you had a really positive reset. Like you got self-handicapped by the beauty of life and family, right? Versus some destructive spiral.
Well, Kirsten Ulmer actually, one of the events said something that resonated with me. And when did we do that flow camp? That was 2 or 3 years ago?
It was 2017. Yeah.
All right. So 3 years ago, she said something that hit me, where she said that a lot of athletes will feel a sense of relief after they get injured. And that was absolutely something that I'd felt in the past. And it's a way that I would, if I'm imagining the future, that was kind of like an easy way out of, well, I could just get injured doing something gnarly, so that then nobody could ever like point a finger at me and I'd have to take a few months off. And just wrapping my head around that, I was like, it is the easy way out. Like it's an easy way to this stuff. And it took me years to kind of try to work through that, but really coming back to having a lot of fun with what I do. All right, I can't do that if I'm injured. So, all right, that's not a fun way out, and just continuing to try to rebuild what it is that excites me. And that's kind of where I'm like, even training for this event, I'm not focused on, I have 2 hours to go and play. I'm focused on what the conditions are perfect for, not training, because I just want to go out and have fun.
Beautiful. Well, and I don't know if you read it, but there's an awesome book called The Dow of Poo. There's basically Taoism through Winnie the Pooh. And it's a kick-ass little book, super easy to read, but it's actually, solidly sophisticated breakdown of Taoist philosophy. And it sounds like you're right in there, which is the concept of Wu Wei. That's like WUWEI. And it's basically just going with the flow, right? It's the effortless effort. And it felt like, I'm imagining as a kid growing up on Maui, that's all it was all day long, just big ass, wonderful playground. And then as sponsorships, as profile, as all those things start stacking, it gets a little tight, and you found a way. So given that it was love and life and familyhood that kind of gave you that reset, what was it like to win this last year and come back to your wife and baby? Tell us about, just that whole full circle experience.
Well, I mean, with having them there, all of a sudden it changed traveling, where for the last 2 years, I've had a very strong connection to my wife. And anytime I would travel, especially without her, it would feel like it was exciting and it was fun, but maybe I wasn't totally like whole. And having her there with me all of a sudden was like, now these trips, like they can go on as long as we want. Like, I don't really care. And then having her and our baby on that trip, I was like, wow, like legitimately, I don't care where we are, because all of a sudden now home is wherever the three of us are. And that turning that trip into such a homey feel, and making, cooking food every night together, and just being like, wow, this is such an incredible experience. While a lot of the competitors are out partying and kind of just like getting together, I'm like, I'm just going to be at home chilling. Thanks. And that experience with them was amazing, because I feel like I've always wanted to spend more time at home and to be more cozy, basically. And going out into the competition, I knew that they were going to be there. So I was like, I really don't care. Like, I know I have my good sponsors. I know I have them. So last place will be funny. Like, it would be entertaining if I came in last place, especially because a lot of people expect that I'll be pretty good. So and I was like, and that would be a whole opportunity of itself, where I could talk about humility, and I could help out with somebody else, and hopefully, have one of my teammates go and win, and I could be there to support them. So I'm like, there's no bad outcomes. And as soon as I kind of stopped caring, and I did one thing that was huge this year where I got a camper van on the beach.
Nice.
So I'm chilling in this AC camper van listening to lullabies with my wife and baby, and I'm just watching the other competitors like pace back and forth in the hot sun, and I'm like, they're stressed out. Like, interesting. And then I watched them start to ride, and I was like, they're not riding very good. Like, these guys, they can do so much better. Like, they're such incredible riders that I was scared of. And then watching them on this day, I was like, they're having a tough day, or it's like, I can see what's going on in their head, and they're not settled. And I was just like, I feel great.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's awesome.
So thankful to have set myself up in this way where I was like, all right, I feel good today. It's just another day. We're just going to go out there and ride.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely had a bumpy road, but the entire day I had that same feeling that I had that first year in 2013 that I'd been searching for the entire time, where I like looked around at a few people throughout the day. I'm like, you see what's happening. Like, I feel this. You feel that too. Like, all right.
Nice. That's awesome. And that really, I mean, again, that feels like, you found the key to getting back in the Grail Castle was basically love and love of life.
Yep.
It was stoke. You as a youngster, just fully full of stoke, which obviously anybody that knows you knows you shit rainbows of stoke, but also now to the point of that coming from the family and coming from love, and your description of sitting in the van in between heats and that kind of stuff and seeing the other guys kind of tacking out. That reminds me of there was a really interesting study on the pro tennis tour, and they were studying the top 10 guys versus the next 90. So the top 100, but top 10 as against the other data set. And what they found is that like Federer and Nadal, those guys in between sets, they've all got their rituals. They all, pick their shorts and straighten their strings and bounce the ball 3 times and do that shit. But like what they noticed is that the top 10 guys were getting their heart rates down sub 75, sub 70% in between sets. And the next 90 were still tacking along 85% plus. So over 5 sets, those guys were running marathons, and the top 10 guys were running 10Ks. And so it feels like you talk about lullabies, air conditioning, the 2 folks you love the most on the earth, and you're obviously downgrading your vibe. You're not coming in all amped. You're coming in like baby time.
Yep.
Which sounds like, again, just like this accidental but beautifully organic way you have hacked self-sabotage, right? Because you've ended up having to reset your scheme anyway without having to blow up your world. You've actually wanted to grow your world. And active recovery, right? Because you're tuning into like baby vibes, not other not bro vibes.
Yep.
And then non-attachment, which is like, I'm so full, I'm stoked anyway, but here it comes, the paradox of now I get it all back.
Precisely.
Beautiful. Well, there you have it, folks. I think that's probably about as good an example as expressed via Jesse's life and career of how to have it all by being willing to let it all go.
Yep.
It's awesome. Dude,
that's the trippiest thing to see, to win that one, where especially I feel like everyone was looking in, almost expecting, be like, you haven't been training, you're not as focused, and to come out with the win, I was like, all right, there we go, like that worked. Yeah,
it's the exact opposite of kind of like the hustle porn ethos. I mean, like the Gary Vaynerchuks and and the Tom Bilyeu's and then the sort of like grind it, and it's much more, especially, I mean, it makes sense for a sport so focused around feel and attunement, the ocean.
That is really the challenge, is I spend my life kind of looking up to so many people who do just put like just an incredible amount of commitment. And I feel like there are so many aspects of what I do where I have to embrace that. But also, like, I'd say one of the biggest things that I've learned is when to like hold it, when to slow it down, when to hold off, when to not try to train these tricks. And that's been a bigger challenge than just grinding. But I feel like constantly grinding away on the mindset to get to that point. But then you said that we found it by relaxing and loving. So who knows?
That is awesome. I mean, basically, there's a guy, John Halcyon Stan. He's kind of a longtime burner, but they have a camp. But I mean, it's awesome for like downhill mountain biking. It's awesome for everything. But he says, float more, steer less, love more, fear less.
I love it.
You know, and it sounds, I mean, and you think about it, right? Because I mean, if you're on a bike, if you're over a rocky section or on a snowboard or skis, and what do? You get tight, and you either hit the brakes or hit an edge. You are actually being heavier over the rocky section, right? Versus like, oh, actually, I need to actually get off the brakes. I need to pick up some speed, and I need to float that section to the next place I can actually get a traction and make a turn. So don't need to be telling you this. This is obviously super intuitive to you. Now we want to open it up for questions, because obviously there's a bunch of folks here, and I'm sure they're fired up to jump in. I'm going to ask you one more question, because you said just at the end there that you kind of learned not to force it and not to necessarily take all of those risks. But there is one, and that our mutual buddy Paul Krako and I were marveling at, which was your kite experience. And I don't even know what mountains you were in. What mountains were you in where you boosted that huge fucking kite and ended up?
That was in Norway, and we'd gone. I was on this heli ski trip where we're filming, and the concept being taking these surfers and putting them in the mountains with professional snowboarders and skiers.
Yeah.
So it was a bunch of surfers, a bunch of Tahitians with myself, and we were having a great time in the mountains, where they were taking us down pretty steep runs, but for them it was minor. For us, it felt good. And one day I was like, I need to bring my kite up here. Like, I need to do this. This has to happen. We're filming this movie. I cannot not bring my kite up. So I created this plan, and I was like, all right, perfect. Like, I've seen people do this in these types of mountains. I know that I can basically speed fly and jump 10 to 50 feet off the ground, and just like, there'll be the shot where we'll all be riding down the mountain. We have the helicopter shooting, and there'll be 5 snowboarders, and I'll just be like 20 feet above them. Like, perfect. It's going to work great. And, I went through this, and about 5 seconds after I launched my kite in the air.
Yeah, but I mean, wasn't it a big ass kite?
I took a 17 meter, which in hindsight was much bigger than I needed.
A little spicy. Yeah.
Yeah, but I've went actually with Don Losey and a whole crew in Utah a bunch. I've went out where I'd take the 17 meter and we'd boost off mountains. And that was when I realized there's this moment very quickly where I realized that in Utah, I've played in mountains that are about like this. And in Norway, we were playing in mountains closer to that. So all of a sudden, what that steady glide just picked me up and kind of put me maybe about 1,000 feet in the air. And I kind of looked around. I was like, I screwed up. This was a screw up. And I didn't, to me, the only real mistake there was that I didn't have a plan B. Normally, we go out to Jaws, we have plan B, C, D. I go out anywhere, I have at least a few plans. I did the toe up, I had a reserve parachute in my head. Even if it's in my head and it won't actually work, I know that I have a few plans. And this one, since I didn't think I was going to go that high, I didn't have a reserve parachute. I heard the one of the kite testers, as he handed me the kite, he kind of looked at me, the 17 meter when I was on Maui, and he's like, dude, don't worry about it. I hand tied all the bridles myself. You're good. And I just heard him pop into my head. I was like, I cannot believe that I've put my life in all of those little knots. And if anything slips, it's done. But that was also a beautiful experience where I'm like, okay, what options do you have now but to try to get back down and try to perform? And I mean, that was very beautiful, where it was such a trippy 5-minute flight. I made it
5 minutes. Holy smokes.
5 minutes. So it was a long enough time to really like sit in. It's not like that you see a car swerving into you and you have that split second to like swerve away and you have that heart racing for hours afterwards. It was that slow, and all of a sudden that mic drop where you're like, I screwed up really bad. And then it was 5 minutes of trying to be like, all right, how do I land back on the mountain and not in the middle of the valley in a tree that's 200 feet tall and fall to my death? And I had no idea what I was doing, not a clue, but just kind of went with what felt right and somehow made it back down to the mountain. And after that, I learned how to paraglide, because I was like, I'm never going to be caught with my pants down like that again.
Awesome. Well, yeah, dude, that was one where we were just like absolutely shaking our heads in a high five, just raising a glass to you long distance when we saw that one. So well
thank
played,
you.
man.
I appreciate that.
Fuck yeah. And that notion of like 5 minutes in, or like being like, whoa, shit, whoops, that also sounds like, people dabbling with DMT and other things. You're like, oh my gosh, I think we overshot the moon here. Like, must stick the landing. Like there's no fucking around here. So yes, there's no limit to, basically, ecstatic or like experiences that take us out of ourselves, all end up being death practices. And some of it's of our ego, some of it's of our meat suit, some of it's, some of it's of our stories or preferences, but like whether it's combat, martial arts, extreme sports, psychedelics, sexuality, meditation, smart tech, you name it, anything that does a cold reboot on what we thought was up. And then we suddenly find ourselves cat out a window, and making sure we have to stick the landing. That's the game. And I would say you're one of the best at it, man.
Well, it's become a very fun thing to practice.
Beautiful. All right, so let's jump in. Let's hear some questions from some folks. And we got one here that says, Jesse, you briefly mentioned visualization, and you also talked about heat practice or heat days. So I'd love you to unpack those if that's a subset of your mental training.
Well,
and this is something a lot of top athletes talk about as instrumental. Can you talk about your visualization process and how much of your learning and progression do you feel like it actually takes place in land, in your head, or on the water?
Well, the concept that I've trained with visualization is to basically to live the day before you do it. So that then when you get to that point, when I wake up in the morning, I already know I'm going to go down, I'm going to make coffee, my cereal's right here. From that, I'm going to roll and stretch out and basically plan out every moment of the day is step one. And that translates into the heat of, okay, I am going to visualize an hour before the heat and every single move that I do, so that then when I do get to that point, I can shut my brain off. I can just coast. Because on autopilot, I already know where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. And the way that I really would train that with my trainer here is we would create these heat days. So I would time it out and say, okay, I know that the contest is going to start at 11 o'clock. I'm going to be in heat 3. I'm going to advance from that. I'll be in heat 12. And I'm going to advance from that. I'll be in heat 17. So I'd take those times. And then I'd take 15 minutes at 11, at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, at 6 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
And I would say, okay, those are my heats. And some days I wouldn't be kiting the whole time. I would have my bike in my truck and I would go down to the beach and I would have my first heat be super dialed. And then I'd be like, all right, now it's time to get food. So then I'll just kind of be constantly keeping an eye on that watch and knowing, okay, half an hour before my heat, I have to be getting ready. And we would do it in a number of different ways, but basically for the heat, for those 15 minutes, I would be going 100%. Kiting, on a bike, running, wherever I am, just to make the day possible. Mm-hmm. And as I'm going 100%, as I'm on the bike, just giving it everything I have, I'm in my head riding my heat. So I'm going out, okay, I see that wave, boom, go up in the air, and I'm feeling the rotations, I'm feeling those movements. And to me, that, like, it's a very challenging thing to really feel it, but the more I got into it, the more I felt like, I can ride these heats sitting on the couch. And that kind of, has helped me create this way to look at life and be like, I'm going to plan out, I'm going to be able to visualize every possible scenario here. And most likely one of my scenarios isn't going to happen, but it'll probably be a similar version to one of these things. And yeah, it is a double-edged sword of trying to be prepared for whatever could happen, and also not comparing my reality to my expectations too much. So trying to eliminate those expectations and be as prepared as I can with one of these different concepts of what could happen.
Beautiful.
Hey,
Beautiful.
Jesse, we have a question from Laurel Eastman in Cabarete. Has your risk management changed at all now that you have a family? And are you more cautious when you go out on the water? And then do you think your baby is a daredevil like you?
Well, I have no idea what types of risks my baby's gonna want to take, or as she grows up, what she's gonna want to do. But at this point, I really understand. Like, a lot has made sense where I'm gonna support her no matter what she wants to do, and I couldn't be more excited to figure out or to learn from her what excites her. And with my riding, I haven't honestly changed a single thing, because there's never been a day that I've gone out and thought that I was going to do something that would kill myself. And I've never, if I'd weigh the risk and if I thought it was a bad idea, I'd say no. And maybe there was one experience where I gave myself a 50-50 chance. I was in Argentina jumping over, and I decided to jump over this very large pile of rocks, which would have been the largest land gap at the time. And I did 3 test jumps, and out of those 3, 2 of them I would have cleared it. The third one I wouldn't have. And I was like, I'd say 50-50 chance that this is gonna work. And if not, I'm gonna go very, very fast into a large pile of rocks. So I just don't know. And I probably did the run into this jump 150 times until I was like, I timed in my head the gusts. They're pretty predictable, or they're pretty consistent. So I finally had a moment where I was like, all right, it feels right. And I cleared the rocks by about 6 feet. So it was extremely dangerous, and I would call it very risky, and a risk that I wouldn't take today. But having a child in my life hasn't changed that at all, because apart from that one, I feel like I'd normally say if I don't have a 90% chance of success, I'm probably not going to do it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, and I have a question on that, just thinking of your little girl growing up on the island and how you did as well. And, coming up with Kai, and in fact, I think I see both of you guys as, A, you came up together, B, you're both performing at a world-class level, and C, my sense of it is that you guys came up as watermen, right? You didn't come up as just one-shot wonders. You weren't sort of like little hothouse kids, trained to be ice skaters or trained to be gymnasts, right? You grew up in love with the ocean. And even the boards behind you right now, right? That full expression, and seeing you at Nazare, seeing you at Jaws, right? Getting the full experience, not just a narrow discipline. And so talk about that, like how, because there's David Epstein he wrote an awesome book called The Sports Gene, but he's come out subsequently with a book called Range. And it basically makes the case that 10,000 hours of practice is kind of bullshit. Actually, the most successful people are the ones who dabble for the longest. Right. Yeah. Before they overcommit. And I know you're big into DH biking. You've got, you love and make the most of the earth. You surf the earth. Right. So talk about that. Talk about that, just coming up, within those families, the mentoring from Robbie, from Laird, from Dave Kalama, like that whole community that you guys were little Groms in, and the idea of diversification, basically. How has that kept you fresh? How has that broadened your skill sets? And what part do you feel it plays in the success of your life as a pro athlete?
Well, I mean, growing up here has been such a magical experience, and my parents never pushed me to do anything. Like, they 100% let me steer the ship. And there was a moment where one of my dad's friends gave us a kite, and he was like, "Jesse, try this. You'll be world champion one day." I was like, "All right, cool." And I was 9 years old, and I flew this kite in this field, and I just got picked up and thrown across this field and completely cartwheeled, tumbled. My dad came running over, all freaked out. And I just remember I was like, "Oh my God, this, yes, like I like that." And from that point on, I was like just searching for that feeling of like just getting yanked, for that powerful feeling. And especially at that age, like I didn't have a car, I didn't have any sort of real freedom. But with this kite, I had freedom. And then I remember talking, there was one night where Laird did this whole movie thing and movie premiere, and we got to talk to them. And I just like was getting my poster signed by Laird, and I was looking at him, I was like, why? Like, why do you do that? Like, it's, you talk in your movie about how dangerous it is, about like how it's like you could die at any point, and you guys are insane. And at that point, those guys weren't even wearing life jackets. And he just looked back and he was like, "Why not?" What? That doesn't answer my question at all. Like, what the hell? And I don't know, like, it's just incredible to grow up around so many athletes here that, yeah, I guess there isn't really a strong why. It's more of that why not. It's anytime we go out in the ocean, it's one, seeing how everyone has taken safety and made that the biggest priority, and how that irresponsible athlete, everyone looks at it and is like, no, like you're the one that we're all gonna push to the side. Whereas I'm not necessarily like a big wave surfer or big wave paddle surfer, but since I go out there with all these guys, I train with all these guys, they welcome me into any of the lineups because they're like, "Oh, like, you know the vibe here." And I would welcome them into any like kite situation, because it's not so much your specific knowledge towards this one thing. It's in the ocean, it's your knowledge of the ocean. Like, doesn't matter what sport we're doing. You understand the way a wave works, the way the water works, the way you can't swim against it in the wrong direction. You completely have to go with it. And that's just like it, that's just how it is. And once you see people like that, you're like, okay, those are the people on my team. Those are the people we can trust. And those are, yeah, some of the best water sports athletes in the world now. And yeah, kind of growing up around those guys was the trippiest thing ever. That being said, relating that a little bit back to King of the Air, in the last few years, we've had a number of new contestants in the event. And none of them, maybe there's been one or two that have been able to get, close to the top 5 or top 10. But it's such a game now where we're just getting it super dialed. And now the competitors that I'm worried about aren't the guys who are the latest and greatest riders with the craziest tricks. It's the seasoned competitors, because they know this game. So it's kind of understanding the game and being able to analyze it on a little bit more of a deeper level. And yeah, I would also be scared of them in any sort of competition, because all of these theories are pretty universal.
I think you just summed it up a couple of sentences ago. That notion of the ocean, right, is as the force of life, and you can't swim against it, and you have to know what it does and how it behaves, and go with the flow, or get beat. Yeah. And I think you've been living it, you've been feeling it, you've been competing, you've been putting your life and your career on the line to do it, and just so stoked for all of the successes and for all of the hard-won, heartfelt, lived experiences and wisdom you've been getting out of it. So thanks, man. It's been awesome to chat.
Thank you. It's magical to kind of hear how you can tie it all in. And yeah, I want to do more events with you so I can understand more of my brain.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks,
Pleasure.
everybody.
Yeah, too easy.
Great. One question for you. I know we've been asking a lot of questions for Jesse, but Jamie, I understand, obviously you did a global bestseller, Stealing Fire. You're working on a sequel to that book. Can you tell us a little about it?
Yeah, sure. So if anybody didn't come across, in fact, Mai Tai is in there. So if you haven't seen it, it's kind of about this, about the origins of this community as well. But it's basically about neuroscience, optimal psychology, and then kind of like Navy SEALs, sex, drugs, rock and roll, neuroscience, Burning Man, that. So like, how do we find and chase the stoke, and what's the research underneath it that makes it all click and happen? So the sequel to the book is called Recapture the Rapture, rethinking God, sex, and death for a world that's lost its mind. So it's basically saying, okay, if that was the case, that there's this early bunch of kind of revolutionaries of which this whole community is clearly a part, what happens when we actually put this into gear and into culture? And what's at stake right now in the world? So basically, how do we make use of, how do we create like basically what's the psycho-spiritual equivalent to blockchain, right? So if you say, hey, blockchain is very easy and it's this kind of open source means of record keeping and currency exchange. On the other hand, like we've had a collapse of an organized religion. You've got all these little sects and all these little things. Most folks are just starving for meaning. But is there an open source operating system that we can share that allows people to have peak experiences, allows people to mend and heal, and allows people to connect to each other? So like in fancy terms, like ecstasis, the peak experience, catharsis, the healing, and like communitas, like the super brotherhood of the eternal stoke. And the idea there is just to say, hey, we have all the tools, and the tools is like if you were thinking like how would IDEO, like as a design firm or someone like design like religion 2.0, if you were going to, and say, don't worry about doctrine, don't worry about like like superstitious stories or articles of faith, just be like, how do you do it? You would hack evolutionary drivers. So like respiration, right? You guys know Wim Hof, free diving. Jesse, you've been doing a lot of free diving as well, right? Practicing with hold downs, like breath, we are hardwired to do. And if you can hack that hardwiring, you can use it to shift your states really effectively, right? Hyperventilation, changing your gas blends. Movement and embodiment, everything from fascia and pelvic and spinal movement to vagal nerve tone to all these things. Sexuality is another one. Like it's a dirty trick that evolution plays on us to make babies by accident. Sorry, Jesse, you got snookered, right? But right, we all did. But if you can interrupt that, and then you can take all of that imprinting and use it to hack consciousness, super powerful. The same with music, the same with substances. So once you know that you kind of have this toolkit, you can design experiences to have peak states, defrag your nervous system, mend trauma, and connect to each other. And ideally, like get to a place of purpose and courage where you're like, okay, I remember what I'm here to do. I remember what I forgot. I'm over it. I'm out of my pain enough that I can dust myself off and do the thing I need to, and we can do it together. So it's my last shot at a blueprint that can scale. So like open source, decentralized, scale. Like here's the toolkit for a bunch of people to wake up, grow up, and show it.
Wow.
Very cool. And
And if that doesn't work, we say fuck it, and we all go chase glassy barrels and bottomless pow.
Can we do both?
I know, but I mean, like when on my dark days, I'm like, maybe we just fuck it and we go do, because the brotherhood of the eternal stoke.
I think both, because I mean, I can't imagine you not trying to change the world by giving more people access to this state of mind. And honestly, from our experience at the Flow Camp, was what I was so shocked about, was the group of people that we had there, where it wasn't just extreme athletes that know how to hack flow. It was 50 people from a wide, diverse, so many different places. Like it was a pretty diverse crowd, and seeing some of those people, which I would not personally imagine they would be able to experience a flow state the way that I have, being able to share a very profound experience where I'm like, that was insane. Looking over at them, they're like, that was insane. it's like, this is the coolest thing ever, where in this, in these few days, they're able to feel what I feel, and I feel like I'm one of the best in the world at finding these extreme experiences. So you being able to take this information and spread it to a much wider audience, I think is something that I really believe in. So we'll do that and then get barreled.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's do it all. Let's do it all. All right,
I
guys.
think you could,
I got to jump, so I just want to wish everybody well and love. It's great to see your faces, and thanks for
Jamie,
tuning in. It's been an awesome conversation.
thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. And I just posted a link in the chat for anyone who can join. We have a Zoom meeting that will be set up just for people in the community, and hopefully, Jesse, you can hop on. And there were a lot more questions for you that we didn't get to, but I think I'm hopefully can answer some of those in that meeting. And with that, we're going to go ahead and hop to that meeting. Just a reminder, we'll have this recording up on the ACTAI Global website soon. Our next fireside chat is in 2 weeks, Wednesday, May 27th. We have Jordan Rudess. He was voted one of the best keyboardists of all time by Music Radar magazine, and he is the multi-instrumentalist extraordinaire for platinum-selling, Grammy-nominated progressive rock band Dream Theater. So, and I've seen some of his live streams on Facebook, and he will definitely be a treat as he'll be playing for us, as he gets a lot of followers on those streams. So please register for that on ACTAI website, actai.global fireside chats. And until our next fireside chat, hope you stay home, healthy, and inspired, and we'll see you in the Zoom room. Thanks. Bye.